Welcome to Lighten Up, the Art of Living Clutter-Free, a podcast for people who are ready to clear the physical, the mental, and the emotional clutter that's been weighing them down. I'm Melanie Cohen, your host, coach, and guide. Each week, we talk about the clutter you can see and the clutter you can't. The stuff in your home, the noise in your head, the expectations, habits, and unmade decisions that quietly drain your energy. This isn't about perfection or minimalism. It's about creating space for what actually matters in this season of your life. Let's lighten up together, starting now. Welcome back to another episode of Lighten Up, the Art of Living Clutter-Free, the podcast where we talk about all things clutter. I have a special guest with me. This is Kristy Crippen, and I'm going to read her bio, and then we're going to dive right in. Kristy is the founder of Collaborative Partners. She's your intuitive thought partner and business process architect. She partners with mission-driven entrepreneurs and small business owners to help pave the way for greater ease and flow in their business. Together with her clients, she holistically examines time management and scheduling needs, productivity, and organizational challenges, as well as accountability and habits, to create simple and sustainable systems that help give the client greater security and freedom in their business, as well as bringing in the people that they need to help build and expand their businesses in a truly meaningful and supportive way. So thank you, Kristy, for being here today. I'm so excited we're doing this.
Thank you for inviting me. I am too. I've so looking forward to this.
Awesome. So I was in a workshop that you delivered, and you were talking about clearing the desk, and I was like, oh, she's my people. And for so many different reasons. So I gave your bio, but like, how did you get to this point? What were you doing before that? Give us more. Who is Kristy?
I come from a corporate background, and I lasted 7.5 years in corporate. I left in November of 2003. And then the question became, okay, what do I do with my life now? And for a long time, I was an office manager / personal assistant for a friend. And then I actually stepped out of that type of work. One day was having, ironically, a conversation with our landscaper, and he, was talking about how busy he was. And I had that all of a sudden this feeling out of nowhere, ask him, what's he doing for the rest of the day? And he fired off a whole list of things he was doing. And then the next little intuitive hit that I got was to ask him if he needs help, which was so out of left field. And I did. And he just lit up like the sun. And he said, let's have a conversation. And so we met for coffee. And then that was really the start of me entering back into this work. And when I started my company, I billed myself as a virtual assistant because that's what I knew. I knew how to be the task doer. And concurrent with that, my mother's health was declining, and my father was at the same time declining because he couldn't fix my mother's health challenges. My mother was declining with cognitive decline. And so I was trying to help my parents with what was going on in their lives. We had to apply for Medicaid for my mother. And at a moment's notice, I would get a call from the company that we'd hired to help us apply for Medicaid. Hey, we need XYZ documents. And then my entire day would be upended. I would jump in the car, drive an hour to my family home, praying that I could find the documents I need, and then get back home, get them the information, and then try to have some sort of semblance to my day. And then I lost both of my parents in 2020 within 4 months of each other, and both cognitive decline. And then it became about the process of healing and coming to terms with their passing and my own evolution and the evolution of my business. And I had a conversation with my business consultant one day, and she said, you're not like what people consider when they think of a virtual assistant. And and that was such a pivotal moment. And I said, well, can you go deeper? What do you mean by that? And she said, when you think of a traditional virtual assistant, it's the task doer. You say to your virtual assistant, here's what I need done. Could you please get this done by next Tuesday? And, any questions that need to be asked or, what have you takes place. And she said, you help people with so many more things like time management, scheduling, productivity, organization. And And it was all because of what had gone on in my life with my parents. So without me even knowing it, that infused into my work. And then that's what led me to the work that I've been doing. When you wake up in the morning, I want you to be excited about the work that you get to do that day. It's not, I have to do this. It's, I get to do this. And so organization is a big part of that.
Sure. So many things to unpack. But one of them is, were you always organized? Like, were you that kid or that teenager, or, is this something that came later with maturity?
In some ways, I was very organized, but in some ways, I wasn't. And my parents, bless them, they were not organized people. When we were selling their home after my father had passed, and then my mother was about to go on to hospice care. And so then we were faced with selling the family home, and we lived there since October of 78. And there was a lot to go through.
I'll
And
bet.
so seeing all of that, that infused into my work. I started thinking about the bigger picture for people. And we show up and we want to project the very best of ourselves, but maybe behind the scenes we're going, thank God nobody can see my desk right now. No, and we're filled with feelings of shame and the whole thing. Definitely as an adult, that is something that I've just embraced because it's such it's a pillar in my life, the stability that
Mm,
it brings.
sure. I love that because, I was a messy, messy kid. When I say kid, I mean like elementary school. Like all kids that age, pick up your toys, pick up your clothes, whatever. But it was during my like preteen and teen years that I saw my craving for organization. Like there were a few things that I was constantly reorganizing, like my books, which is something that happens here now too. And it was like sometimes they were alphabetized by author, and sometimes they were alphabetized by title, and sometimes they were color coded. And I even created a library system. God, I was such a book nerd.
I
And
love that.
I had like a card file system for my friends who would borrow my books because I would say, this is my favorite book, blah, blah, blah. Interestingly enough, my mother's master's degree is in library science, and she had been a
Really?
librarian. But one of the things that I picked up is just because you're aiming for perfection doesn't mean you'll aspire to it, but you won't actually get there. And this is something that I learned. Her need for things to be organized is also her downfall. Like so many other people that struggle with clutter, it's because it has to be like this. And if
Right.
I can't get up here, why bother starting? Why get into it in the first place? And so I feel like sometimes it's helpful to ask people, like, what's your history with organization? Because it comes from so many different places.
It's it's always so interesting because I feel like the topic of organization is such a deeply sensitive topic for people.
Yes.
There are some people who just completely, it's like very cut and dry, like, I'm not organized. And then it's like, okay, on to the next topic. And then somebody else, like the shoulders cave in and, oh God, I'm so not organized. And then like the nervous laughter, and all of the things. And then there are other people who, my spices are alphabetized.
Mine are.
I know. I love that. I just love that because isn't that such a beautiful thing in life when all of a sudden your intuition speaks to you and then you think, if I did it this way, it would solve this problem and it would
Right.
fix this challenge.
One of the kids the other night at dinner at the house, where can I find the pepper? And like I wanted to say under P for pepper, but really it was black pepper she was looking for. So it's labeled B for black pepper. I mean, like, maybe I have to rethink the whole thing. But you raised a couple of interesting points. And I think one of them is that, one, a lot of us have labeled what we are. I'm an organized person, I'm a messy person. And once you acquire that identity as a messy person, it's hard to get out of it because you've said it. It's, a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm a messy person. I'm always going to be a messy person. It's unfair to do identity. But I think the other thing that you we're talking about is something that is so near and dear to me, and it's that concept of embarrassment and shame. Like, my
Mm,
clutter is embarrassing, it's shaming, I don't want anybody to know about it or see it, whether it's just, like, a little pile of paper on the desk or it's, like, significant clutter, and having been a weight loss coach for 20 years, it's the same thing. But, I held such embarrassment and shame over the clutter that my parents had and over my own weight. And I think once we really recognize most of us aren't going to judge for those things, or at least as coaches, I'm not going to judge anyone for anything that they're struggling with. I am only here to help give them tools, help hold them accountable, or help them hold themselves accountable. For some of us, all we need are the tools. We just don't know
right.
what they are, or we know what they are, but we don't know what order to do it in. Like, finding the expert to help guide us can help remove us from that, concept of embarrassment and shame. So I will never forget my mother over her desk had a little like comic. I don't know, it came from the New York Times or from New Yorker magazine or something like that. And it was something about like a messy desk being the sign of genius. And I know I've seen memes all over the place. Einstein is a genius. He had a messy desk. But what if that's not true? Or what if we use that to make it an option to not clean up? And if that's true, let's just say a messy desk is a sign of genius. What if the desk wasn't clean? How much more could that genius accomplish or do if they weren't drowning in stuff? So, one of the reasons I had you on the show is because I experienced you delivering a very meaningful workshop about having a clear desk. Maybe you can give us a rundown of what that looks like.
Thank you. It meant a lot to have you there with me that day. And you gave me such great feedback. And I so appreciate that. And when I created my talk, instantly I went for the practical. What are all of the practical tips that I can stuff into that to try to add value? And but then intuitively it was, this is so much more than the pragmatic and the practical. This is about the psychology of it. And that's why I really went in with that in my talk. Are there people who love a messy desk? Sure. Are there people who can say, I know exactly how to find whatever I'm looking for? Sure. More power to you. But what I tend to see are people who have a messy desk, and then the arms go out like a cat on an icy pond where the legs just go flying out, the arms go out. Where is that thing? Where is that? And then you're like lifting things up and you're like, oh my God, I got to dust. There's dust being kicked up now. And it just compounds what all of those feelings that you just spoke about. And I think that really when you sit down to a clean desk and everything is well organized and your files are purged, and you can say to yourself, I don't have any unnecessary paperwork in here, and my laptop is well organized, and I don't have 14 of the same documents, and it shifts your energy, the energy within you. Somebody could say, well, I just close my office door at the end of the day and I just forget about it. It gets to a point where you wake up in the morning and you're getting your coffee, and then you're thinking about your day, and you open that door and you just feel that pit in your stomach because of how your desk looks. And it's just everything just sinks within you. And then over time, what I find that happens is that it backs up earlier and earlier. So it's not just when you put your hand on that door handle and open the door. It's when you're, maybe if your office is upstairs and you're walking up the stairs towards your office, and then it backs up further to you're standing there at the Keurig, and you can hear the coffee dispensing into the cup and you smell the coffee, and then you go, the desk. And it's my whole thing is, why live like that? Why have those moments where it just drains your energy? What can we do to help raise your energy? What are those simple things that you can do on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, to really give you that environment that feels so enriching and inspiring? So much of your life is lived at your desk, both personally and professionally. So
Right.
for me, like, doesn't it make sense that you sit down at a place that really enforces that?
Right. Right. You made me think of a few things. One was one of the ways that I like to operate in goal setting is a tool I like to call the lowest common denominator. And really, what I mean is going back as many steps as possible so that you have the plan of attack that's gonna work best.
Right.
And so, like, if you were to tell me, I wanna go to bed at 11, it's not like at 11 o'clock you say, "Oh, turn off the TV and go to bed." You need the time to wash your face, brush your teeth, do whatever skincare you might have, brush your hair, put pajamas on. Maybe you're the person who lays your clothing out the night before, sets up the coffee the night before. If that's all the stuff that needs to happen before you go to bed, then it really needs to be 10:30. And then the
Right.
question is, but wait, do I want to meditate or read or something in bed before I go to bed? Okay, now I need to back it up a little more. And that's what I'm hearing about the end of the workday. And I want to share with everyone in the last job that I had working for somebody else. They did a really great job of making sure that we stopped 10 minutes before the day was over to, like, clean everything out. Close all of the applications, save all the documents, do all the things, submit your hours, all those things that need to get done, and then close the computer. And in fact, when the computer was sent to me, it was already set that at 10 minutes to 5, was it 10 minutes to 5 or 10 minutes to 5:30, whatever it was, 10 minutes before, the computer went dark. I don't mean dark goes away, but it goes into night mode so
I
that
love
if
that.
you weren't paying attention to the clock, it went into night mode and you were like, "Oh, I got 10 minutes to, clean everything up." And so I did a fairly decent job of taking that with me and continuing with that. My dark mode goes later now that I work for myself, but it still goes to dark mode for the time that I'm not paying attention. But the other piece of it is you suggested pushing the chair under the desk. It's something so
Right.
little. You were like,
Right.
I close my date book, I put my pens in the pen cup, I pick up my water bottle to take with me, but I wasn't pushing the chair under the desk, and it's the stupidest little thing. It wasn't fitting underneath. But what did I learn? I don't know if you can tell while I'm recording, but I have a desk that goes up and down. What would happen if at the end of the day, I raised the desk enough for the chair to go underneath
Right.
and then in the morning, the silliest little thing, but when you walk out and walk in, the chair under the desk, it's that much less clutter. I mean, it's like so minuscule, but it is now a part. What did we do when we were in school? Push your chairs
Yeah.
under your desks.
Yeah.
I can name all of the teachers that told me to push my chair under my desk, but I wasn't doing it, at work, at home. So I want to
Right.
thank you for that
Oh, you're
because it
welcome.
really can be it can be the littlest thing, right?
Yeah, it's so often in life we think it's these big grand plans that are going to move the needle. And do they move the needle? Of course, but it's those little subtle nuanced things that can be such a huge game changer for us.
100%. 100%. So, do you work in helping people get organized time management? Are you predominantly doing that virtually with them, or do you go to people's homes or offices?
Predominantly, it's virtual. If somebody is local to me, I'm in southeastern Pennsylvania. If someone is local to me and they would like to have me come to their office and help them organize their office, I would be more than happy to do that. I find it very useful too. I've had clients send me photos of like different sections of their office. And then they describe what it is they're seeing as I'm seeing this visual, because that's my primary learning style is visual. And so then I'm looking at this image as I'm having this conversation with my client, and then we start dissecting. Okay, what is in that cluttered corner of your office? Tell me about that.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
and then they might say, oh, it's the thing that I got to return to the neighbor, or it's the thing that I got to take to the post office, or it's a box of receipts that has to go into the spare closet. And then we further break it down, and then it's like, okay, well, how long will it take you to go to the post office? And then they, oh, you know what? I have to go grocery shopping later. I could do it then. And then it'll take me literally not even 5 minutes to pick up that box and put it into the closet. So through the magic of conversation, and then it gets the energy moving. I find that
Sure.
so often when the energy is stagnant, that's what has us want to shut down. And then we don't want to
Right.
take action from that place.
Right. Yeah. I love what you're talking about because it also reminds me, like, I always tell people or ask people, like, what's the minute rule? Like, if it's, so I have a 1 minute rule. If it's only going to take a minute, do it now. Whether it's
Right.
answering a text, answering an email, picking a piece of paper up off the ground, like, like all of those things, because in the moment, it's like, that'll only take a minute, I'll do it later. But if at the end of the day, there were two of those kinds of voicemails, one of those texts, one of those emails, and a pile of paper you said you were going to sort through, now it's the end of the day, it's going to take 30 minutes. That's overwhelming compared to but if I just did that thing in a minute. And so the same is true for running an errand. How far do you have to go? Are you leaving the house anyway? Is it on the way? Is it something you can delegate to somebody else?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I appreciate hearing that. I agree 100% with you. So talk to me about time management because that's not something I necessarily work with people on. So how do you help someone with time management?
As far as time management, I always think it's important to start with the wins. So, what about your schedule do you love? They might say, I start solidly every day at 8:30 or whatever time it is, or I feel good about the amount of time that I'm doing X. And where are your challenges? Don't attach any emotion to them. Let's just get them all out. And maybe they might say, I'm in 8 different networking groups. The meetings are always on my calendar and I get to maybe one per week and I feel guilt. Maybe I always fear double booking myself because I've done that before and the pain from that is awful. And then we just look at, okay, how do we just gently tweak things? Like we were talking before about those beautiful nuances and the subtleties in life. What are the things that maybe it's like a little 3-degree click to the right and then it's the sweet spot for you. And then you go,
Sure.
oh, that feels so much better. How do we carve out the blocks of time that you need to get the deep work done, to get the things done? What are the things that are in your zone of genius that maybe you're not even doing because you're so busy doing the other stuff that we could automate, that we could delegate, that we could streamline? So it's about looking at all of that as a whole, and we just dissect it piece by piece.
I appreciate that. As someone who was not diagnosed with ADD until she hit 30, I could go back in time and think of all the times I would have been supported by an executive function coach or a time management coach or something like that. But in the 70s and 80s, it wasn't getting diagnosed as often and it definitely wasn't getting diagnosed in girls. One of the stories I like to tell about time management is I had a math teacher sit down with me. I think I was in 11th grade. For those who don't know, I was a competitive gymnast growing up. And seriously, like my school schedule was created so that I could leave early and go, and train for 5 hours. And he said to me, how long is a floor routine? I said, a minute and a half. How long is a beam routine? A minute and a half. How long is a bar routine? I couldn't even answer the question. I like did my routine in my head. I was like, hip, hand, da, 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 da. It's like 20 seconds. And what about a vault? And I'm like, you run 40 yards and then you fly through the air and then you land. And he said, that's your problem. I said, what do you mean that's my problem? And he said, you have been trained to be incredibly like to the highest level of attention, so fixated on the one thing that you're in the middle of doing. And then as soon as it's over, you don't have to do that anymore. And I don't know if it was a you don't have to do it anymore, but this was the closest we were going to get to someone understanding my problems with attention. Just assuming it was because I was a gymnast, not, well, the problem already existed. And that was a perfect thing for me to do because it only needed me to be super attentive for a very short period of time. No one's going back and changing the 70s or the 80s for any of us, or the 90s for that matter, because I think I was diagnosed in the year 2000. Um, but to better understand both what our skills are or what the skill set is, to your point, where's the magic? I can actually make my ADHD a superpower. It doesn't have to be my downfall. And what that means is I know I am best when I use the Pomodoro method. For those who don't know, Pomodoro, the tomato, like the little tomato timer we had in the kitchen when we were growing up. and it's setting the timer for 30 minutes. Just stay focused on that one thing you're committing to doing for 30 minutes. It's really helpful for me because then I don't like get up and get distracted by doorbells and phones and bright shiny objects on the other side of the room. It's just that 30 minutes. You also made me think of another thing, and that was someone had challenged me on the idea of start with the hardest thing. Well, I'm just going to say, because I have like so many feelings about it, like, but the easy things, I can get them done and get them out of the way and then do the hard thing. But when I do that, often I don't get to the hard thing because now I've put it off for so long. I might as well wait until tomorrow when I'm actually going to start with the harder thing. It just takes a learning. So you address that.
It's interesting because there are people who very much advocate do the hard thing first. There are people who say knock out the easy things so that you can focus on, the other things. And honestly, when I work with my clients, I just assess, okay, what is it that works for you? Like that's kind of where a piece of where the holistic comes in. It's treating you as the individual. In no way, shape, or form am I downplaying anybody who says this is the system I've created. I love that you've created a system and you're sharing that with the world. I look at what works for you as an individual. Like there are days where I'm thinking, you know what, let me just get the thing done. And then I can just feel the expansiveness and the relief of that. And then there are days, Melanie, where I wake up and I'm like, I know that I can't dive into that thing until I knock off all of these little niggling things because my attention is going to be pulled in these little micro ways towards those. So let me just get them done. And then I can go, okay, now I have breathing room. Let's dive into this.
It's implying that one, it's not one size fits all.
Right,
What works for you may not work for somebody else, but it also means what works for you may not work the same way every day. Have
right,
flexibility.
right. Like, especially say that I didn't sleep well the night before for whatever reason. And I wake up and I'm just, oh man, God, I feel spent. And I'm not in any mental shape to sit down and do that thing. So it's, you know what, let me get a running start here and more of like a walking start. Let me ease into it, knock out a few things that, are easy and then my brain wakes up and then the blood's flowing and I've had my tea and then it's okay, now I'm ready. So I find that going I'm always going inward and listening. What do I need right here right now in this moment? And then I let that guide my actions.
Like that. I just feel it's so important to be flexible, whether it's with yourself or with someone else.
And I find too that with time management, and this feeds into the productivity piece, is at the end of the day, I review my priorities for the next day. I review my schedule, I review my priorities, and I have a running master task list and I have due dates for each item. So I know, there's no surprises. And then I just pull from that master task list, and then that becomes what I have to do the next day. I aim to get the top 3 to 5 things done, whether it's personally and or professionally done that I have to the next day, and I assign a time value for each one. Let's say that somebody emailed me the night before, and I want to get back to them, and I'm like, okay, that'll take me 5 minutes, and I always overestimate. So I knock out that email. Let's say another thing is maybe on a personal note, I need to call and schedule a dental appointment, and I know that I can get that done in 2 minutes because it's just super quick. So I just think about that. And then I can really start to fit that in, slot in those tasks in my day. And then I can keep making that beautiful progress. Because every time I get something done, it just energizes me more where I go, okay, what can I do now?
Right, right. I think it's for that very reason that as my day's going by, if a task gets added on to my list, I write that and cross it out so I can go, yay, you, Melanie, you did it. Because there is such a great feeling with accomplishing a task, even if it's as simple as calling and making a dental appointment.
Especially when you think about physicians' offices or offices in general that are only open from 8 to 5, like you have to carve out time in your day to get that done so you can keep your life moving accordingly. And there is a certain joy, is there not? when you just take the pen and you just draw that line and you feel the ink pouring out of the pen onto the page, and it just does something to you psychologically in the coolest way.
100%. I do it with highlighter, but it's the same thing.
Right.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. So I was thinking, I hadn't thought about this in a really long time. Almost 30 years ago, the company I was working for paid for all of us to take Stephen Covey.
Yeah.
I don't know how much older than you I am. I know that I'm older, but like that was the best we had. I had a Stephen Covey planner that was like this
Yeah.
thick. I mean,
Yeah.
this was before smartphones. This was before I got a Palm Pilot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Again, like we're dating ourselves by saying these things. So there was a point in time where it was all on paper. And so I know that there are people who work 100% digitally. I find great pleasure and great clarity in operating with a paper list and a digital calendar. If it had just paper, I would miss appointments left and right. I need that digital reminder. I need the alarm to go off. I need to look at my
Yeah.
calendar in the morning. But because of the whole concept of like crossing things out, I also feel like that's something I can have out and in the open, that one page on my desk, the planner is open. I can refer back to it in ways that I wouldn't refer to on my computer or my desktop monitor. Everybody's going to be different, but I just like, I always want to put out there isn't one right way to do this. It's not my way or the highway. This is the way that works for me. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
this is the podcast about clutter. And we talk about clutter. We talk about paper clutter. We talk about mental clutter and emotional clutter and calendar clutter and digital clutter and people clutter, 24-hour news cycle clutter, social media clutter. So if I were to ask you, because even someone who is really great at time management and organizational skills, if I asked you, what is your clutter, what would you say?
Oh, right now, one of the things that I'm doing is I'm taking inventory of all of my files. As my business has changed and expanded and grown over time, the filing system that I used before, there are elements that are still really rock solid, but then there are things that I'm like, oof, that does not work for me anymore. And what I'm seeing is how I have some documents that could be lovingly purged and said goodbye to. You know, when you're on somebody's newsletter list and they send out an email, the weekly newsletter, and they're saying, "Hey, I just created this thing, and this is how it can help your business." And you're like, "Thank you so much," and you download it, and then you forget that you've downloaded it, and maybe you download it again, or maybe you forget that you downloaded and now you've got this rock solid system. So even though what they created is still great, it just doesn't apply to you now. So I'm just going through and I'm looking at, where do I have duplicates of things? Where, are things that maybe because my business has pivoted are now no longer applicable that, I can delete. I think also it's very easy for us to get caught up in all of the things as far as apps, programs. It's easy to forget that, oh, I've got an account with this program and then I just signed up for this, and they kind of do the same thing. So really evaluating, where do I have duplicates of things?
Well, it's about getting curious, right? Because I think about how many times I've heard people say, well, just open the notes section on your phone or on the computer. And it totally doesn't work for me because literally, I know it's easy to get to your notes. I would prefer to send myself an email or a text. I would
Mm,
rather, voice that way. I could be on a walk and be like, oh, that'd be a great idea for a podcast episode, and send myself an email. Is that any different than the notes section? It is, because my email is always open on my computer. I
okay.
don't always have the notes section open.
I
Are
see what you're
we
saying.
are we belaboring the issue of where I should put notes? Absolutely I am. And I am because I want people to hear what works for other people and then not feel badly because that methodology doesn't work for them. Like, oh, well, she's perfect and she does it this way and I could never do it that way. So I'm destined to always be disorganized or messy or cluttered or whatever. I am a huge fan of getting curious meaning what would work for you and why or why not do you think it would work for you? And remember, why can be a very judgmental word.
Yeah.
So maybe instead of saying why, asking the question, what would get in the way? What's the potential block to that particular methodology working for you? Who's your ideal client?
Someone who wants that partnership, someone who is tired of doing things alone. They want something different for their business. They celebrate everything they've accomplished, but they recognize I've got some sticking points here and I'm tired of living like this. Or I see I've got all this expansion, and if I don't get XYZ put in place, could go off the rails. So it's people who are ready for help. It's people who want change in their business. Someone who embraces the fact that I use the word holistic in how I describe my services. That they see that I embrace strategy and I'm very process oriented, but there's also this side to me. I talk about the energy of things, that they embrace the fact that they've created this incredible business for themselves and they want to immerse themselves in all the beautiful energy of it. That it's not just I've got to do this and this and this and these are my KPIs. And I mean, yes, all of that is important, but I want you to embrace how it feels to be in your zone of genius. And my people feel that same resonance as well.
So I'm so happy you talked about energy because it's something I talk about a lot, the energy of things, that everything animate and inanimate has energy. And if something has good energy, you need to keep it. Love it, use it, experience it. Like I have a million paintings because I love art and it's not there because it's serving a purpose other than every once in a while. If I'm looking this way, I'm looking at the Kandinsky. If I'm looking that way, I'm looking at the Hundertwasser. If I'm looking over there, I'm looking at the thing my daughter made. But I think when you recognize that it has good energy and you keep it, it also gives you the permission. If something doesn't have good energy, let it go. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter who it belonged to, how much it cost, whether it served a purpose at a different time. None of the answers to those matter if it's got bad energy. You just have to get it out. And so this applies to people who own their own businesses and people who don't, because we still have a need for good energy in our lives. So I think it's very helpful that you said that and that you said it in that way.
Thank you.
What would you want people to take away from this conversation?
I would love for your incredible listeners to think about their organizational systems. And how do their current organizational systems make them feel? Say that there's something that's not working, and then you can just sweep a pretty broad brush across that canvas and go, none of it's working, which you've touched on throughout this conversation. Give yourself grace and say, okay, XYZ is not working, but guess what? A through J is, and I celebrate that. And if something isn't working, what would it be like to correct it? What would it be like to sit down at that desk that is immaculately cleaned? And what would it be like to have your files be completely organized? Tap into the vision of things. If you were someone who journals, sit down and journal on that. Give yourself grace if things aren't where you want and or need them to be, because maybe there are things that have been going on in your life that have required your attention. So maybe your desk is not pristine the way you want it to be. At the end of the day, when you wake up in the morning, I want you to celebrate the fact that you've created this business, whatever your unique individual business is, and how you show up powerfully for people. And what is it that you are missing that could help you show up in an even bigger, more powerful way?
I never knew as many business owners as I do now. I don't know that I knew how many small business owners there were. And I also know when I heard small business owner before that I saw it very differently than I
Yeah.
see it, for myself now. And I think we all bring to it all of our previous experiences, your previous careers or your education or the family or the home that you grew up in or the new family you've created with, your own spouse or partner, and how that may look different than your previous experiences, and just allowing there to always be growth. And growth could mean bringing in new, and it could also be removing what is old. While not all of my listeners are business owners, the takeaway is the same because we all
Right.
have a workspace at home, whether we just use it for paying the bills
Mm-hmm.
or we use it in bigger ways. Okay, so I'm going to take a selfie today. I've never done this during an episode before. And I want to take a selfie because I want it to be my desk where we can see Kristy and we can see me and we can see the rest of the office. And I'm going to add that to the I'm going to add that to the show notes, or it'll be the thumbnail or something like that for the episode.
I
I
love
just
that.
thought it would be fun to do that. Did we miss anything that would be really important for people to know?
The only thing that I can think is that there's never a right time to start. Just start. And we think, oh, I'll start on Monday because Monday feels like a fresh day, or I'll start, January 1. Start right now. You know,
Right.
maybe it's that pile of paperwork that you've been meaning to file in the appropriate filing cabinet in your office. And if you have the time, just get up and go file that stuff. It's about how can you get the energy moving again so you feel vibrant and robust and energized. Because when you
Right.
show up in the world as the very best version of yourself, you're shining an even brighter light into a world that needs it. And we need you and we need your brilliance.
Oh, I love that. I think that's the perfect place to stop today,
I love it.
Kristy. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I had so much fun with you.
Good, 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 good. Thank you for listening to Lighten Up the Art of Living Clutter Free. If this episode resonated, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use just a little bit of lightness. If you're ready for deeper support, you can work with me one-on-one or join my Lighten Up Clutter Free Mindset Group program. You can find all the details at my website, thoughtfullycoaching.com. Until next time, progress over perfection. Messy action is better than no action at all. So let's lighten up.